Stewart-Haas makes some personnel changes, Joe Gibbs sells part of his race team, and apparently there's a new NASCAR video game coming soon. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. So much to get to today. If you haven't already, I highly encourage you to hit that subscribe button down below. Closing in on the second half of the NASCAR season, crunch time. Make sure you're subscribed right here on YouTube so you can stay in the loop on all the latest things NASCAR. Let's start with a tweet I saw just before I hit the record button. I almost skimmed past it, didn't think anything of it at first. I had to pause and look closer at this Legacy Motor Club tweet. Grab your hat, it's almost time to ride in Nashville. And they have Noah Gragson's name prominently featured on this graphic. This is not official by any means, but it could suggest Noah Gragson will return this weekend. That would be awesome if that's the case. It'll mean he only missed one race due to concussion-like symptoms suffered in a hard crash at Gateway. Hopefully this means Noah Gragson is back to 100% or at the very least is cleared to return racing. We'll have to wait and see, but I at least wanted to mention it on the show because again, I was just scrolling and it caught my attention. Typically I ignore just generic team graphics like this, but in this case it stood out to me. Maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't. Now for the first real news story, and this announcement blindsided me. But apparently NASCAR and video game developer Game Mill Entertainment are working on a new NASCAR video game set to release on PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and PC. NASCAR Arcade Rush. Here's a look at some cover artwork as well as some screenshots. I saw these retweeted by Adam Stern. I did not see this coming. I don't know anything about this project, but I'm happy that NASCAR is getting back into the console gaming space. Considering the ongoing fiasco that is motorsport games and how they've utterly decimated NASCAR console gaming in recent years, this is really cool to see. Go back to when I was a kid, I have to give credit to EA Sports NASCAR Thunder 2004. Without that game and the hundreds of hours I probably logged on my PlayStation 2, I'm probably not a NASCAR fan today, I'm just being honest. Console gaming is extremely important. It's maybe the easiest way to engage with younger fans, something that NASCAR desperately still needs more of. So I'm glad to see NASCAR doing everything they can to stay somewhat relevant in the console gaming space. But yeah, at the same time, I look at this and don't judge a book by its cover. But in this case, I think the cover does say quite a bit. I don't really know who's going to buy this game because you look, it doesn't seem to have any of the licenses with the teams or the drivers, so it's not like you can play as a kart racer version of Denny Hamlin or Chase Elliott. You're just driving a generic NASCAR car. Looks like maybe they have some different generations of NASCAR stock cars, which is cool, but like you can't race as Joey Logano. You can't drive the Napa Auto Parts Chevrolet. It's just a bunch of generic NASCARs, maybe some reimagined ISC tracks, which could be cool to play. But otherwise, this looks like a generic kart racing game with the word NASCAR stamped on it. And for $50, apparently that's what this game is going to cost. I don't see this becoming a huge hit or catching on, especially in this era of free-to-play games. And I say this as someone who grew up with kart racing games. I played every Mario Kart there is to play, Crash Team Racing on the PlayStation 1. I even bought the remastered version, the reimagined version a few years ago. Mod Nation Racers, whew, did anyone else play that game? That was freaking classic. I even played the new Hot Wheels game, Hot Wheels Unleashed. Not really a kart racer, but it was kind of like it a few years ago, and it's really good. I love kart racing games. I'll probably play this at some point. I'll probably end up picking it up. But will the average NASCAR fan who wants to race as William Byron or Kevin Harvick or Kyle Busch, will they care to play a generically branded NASCAR kart racing game? I'm skeptical. But I'm glad to see NASCAR's doing everything they can, despite the motorsports game fiasco, to keep pumping out content onto consoles and trying to engage with younger viewers. I at least appreciate them trying, even though this may be a losing effort. I think what we all want most, though, is a functional, fun, not simulator, but mostly realistic NASCAR console game. A la NASCAR Thunder, even the old U-Technics titles, some of those I thought were really good. That's what we all want, and unfortunately, we haven't really gotten one of those, keyword functional, in recent years. We're covering a lot of ground here today. Next, I want to touch on a story that actually broke yesterday. Stewart-Haas Racing is making some major personnel changes. Richard Boswell will replace Johnny Klausmeier as the crew chief for the number 14 Cup Series team. Johnny Klossmeyer will move internally to SHR's Vehicle Performance Group. And Davin Restivo, lead engineer for Eric Almirola's team in the Cup Series, will take over as Riley Herbst's crew chief in the Xfinity Series. But the headline here is that Chase Briscoe, who was in the round of 8 last season, now has a new crew chief. Greg Zipadelli, SHR Chief Competition Officer, said, quote, "We made these changes in the best interests of the entire organization. Different people in new positions brings new perspectives. There's still a lot of racing left to do this year, which means there's still a lot of opportunity. We need to seize these opportunities and make the most of them. And fresh perspectives from the top of the pit box to the preparation inside the shop will help us do that." Driver Chase Briscoe chimed in on Twitter. He said, "Can't express how much I appreciate Johnny and what we accomplished together, from my first Cup win to our deep run in the playoffs. Plus, he's been a great role model for me personally. Looking forward to working with Boswell again." Again? That's right. Richard Boswell and Chase Briscoe worked together in the Xfinity Series in 2019 and 2020. Remember, 2020, Briscoe won 9 races, made it all the way to the championship 4. Now, Boswell wasn't on the pit box for every single one of those wins, but together, across a little more than 2 full-time seasons, Briscoe and Boswell won 8 Xfinity races together. Now they will be reunited in the NASCAR Cup Series. Stewart-Haas Racing needed to make some changes. We've talked about it plenty this season, that they are not the team they once were. You don't need to touch Kevin Harvick, Rodney Childers. That unit is strong. Ryan Preece is new to the team. Chad Johnston is, I guess, kind of new, so maybe don't touch that pairing yet. Eric Almirola may be on his way out. Don't need to mess with the 10 too much until you know who for sure is driving that car next year. But Chase Briscoe, he's your future. And whether it's Klossmeyer, Briscoe, some other reason, the results haven't been great this year. This may be just the beginning of changes that SHR needs to make, but at least it's something. And I don't mean to throw Johnny Klossmeyer under the bus. I don't know that he's the problem. The timing of this announcement is, I think it's just coincidental. It is the off weekend. This is a good time to make some personnel changes. But at the same time, it was just a couple weeks ago that Chase Briscoe's team got hit with a 120-point penalty for counterfeiting a spec part. I don't know that Klossmeyer is to blame for that, but the timing of this move is, it's curious. I think it's just a coincidence. Regardless, like I said, Chase Briscoe is your future, and if things aren't clicking right now, make a change. And, I can compare this move to when Hendrick Motorsports brought in Rudy Fugle, who had worked with William Byron in trucks. They'd had a lot of success together. They teamed up in Cup years later, and look where Byron is now. He's arguably the championship frontrunner. Not saying that's where Chase Briscoe and Richard Boswell will end up, but they could. There's reasons to be optimistic. You never know. We'll be curious to see how these two gel the second half of this season. Can Briscoe squeak across a win, sneak into the playoffs despite that massive L3 penalty? Can they at least build up some positive momentum going into 2024? Will be fun to watch second half of this year. Last story of the day, another one that kind of came out of left field. Joe Gibbs has sold off a minority stake of Joe Gibbs Racing to a new ownership group. Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, a group co-led by Josh Harris, who's been in the news recently because he's expected to buy the Washington Commanders NFL team, the same football team that Coach Joe Gibbs won 3 Super Bowls with back in the day. As part of this deal between Joe Gibbs and HBSE, Joe Gibbs will also become part of their group, which means now Joe Gibbs is like part minority owner of the Philadelphia 76ers basketball team and the New Jersey Devils of the NHL. A lot of moving parts here, but it makes a ton of sense. Of course, that Washington Commanders relationship between Josh Harris, Joe Gibbs, the team, that makes a ton of sense. Cool to see another major investor interested in NASCAR, but I want to look at this from Joe Gibbs Racing's perspective. The name on the building isn't going to change. Will still, according to reports, be called Joe Gibbs Racing. Joe Gibbs still wants to maintain a majority ownership. He wants to maintain the family business. And actually, I saw a tweet earlier today from Adam Stern where he said that Heather Gibbs, who is the father of Ty Gibbs, has started to get involved in the ownership side of Joe Gibbs Racing and NASCAR in recent months. So day to day, I don't think much is going to change over at Joe Gibbs Racing. They just have a new investor in the building, injecting some cash, which, is always good to have more funding. Beyond that, I think this is a big deal for Joe Gibbs Racing because it expands Joe Gibbs's business presence beyond just racing. Look at the other powerhouse NASCAR team owners like Rick Hendrick, Roger Penske, Gene Haas. They each have, I don't know, maybe not billions, but yeah, maybe billion-dollar businesses beyond their race teams. Rick Hendrick's got car dealerships, Team Penske's got truck runs, he owns Indianapolis Motor Speedway, etc., etc., etc. Joe Gibbs has Joe Gibbs Racing. Like, that's his big thing. He doesn't have another business subsidizing his racing operation. His racing operation is his big business. This partnership with Josh Harris and his group may open up some of those, outside partnerships, those B2B, business-to-business deals that other team owners have been able to take advantage of for themselves. That could help with finding sponsorship in the future, for expanding Joe Gibbs Racing's brand beyond just the racetrack. Sky's the limit, and only time will tell how far this partnership really goes, but there's reasons to be optimistic. But it is surprising. Joe Gibbs Racing has been a family operation since the beginning, I think. It still is, but now Joe is willing to listen to outside investors and potentially bring them in. Will be interesting to see long-term how this affects Joe Gibbs Racing, but at first glance, I think this will have a positive effect for all parties involved. Big picture, looking at this as just a NASCAR fan, I'm happy to see more investment into the sport. We'll see how this goes, how things shake out for Joe Gibbs Racing and the Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment Group. I think I'm saying that right. Woo, we covered a lot in this video, a lot of different topics. I don't even know where to begin. Leave a comment down below. Thoughts on the Chase Briscoe Stewart-Haas crew chief swap, Joe Gibbs Racing selling off part of the team, initial impressions of NASCAR Arcade Rush. Leave a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Again, if you're new to the channel and you love racing, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And thank you to my Patreon supporters for your very generous support. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, folks. I will see you again very, very soon.